Listen up, you pathetic, penniless excuse of a woman. I've already filed the divorce papers. This house, everything inside it, and the luxury car, they're all mine now. Once this is finalized, I'm marrying my fiancé. My husband actually screamed the divorce at me, then kicked me out while I was deathly ill. He took everything, thinking he'd won, but he couldn't have been more wrong. Just days later, he'd be the one calling me, sobbing. Before we dive into the story, let me know in the comments what state you're watching from. And please, don't forget to like and subscribe so the channel can keep growing and bring you even more captivating stories. Nala Ebo lay in the enormous bed. The sheets felt icy, even though her entire body was burning with fever. The thin silk robe she usually wore around the house was soaked through with sweat, clinging to her skin. Her throat was dry and raw, and each breath sent a jolt of pain through her chest. For 2 straight days, she'd been confined to bed, utterly helpless. That morning, she'd asked her husband, Zaire, to pick up some fever reducers and antibiotics, but now it was late, and he still hadn't returned. The sprawling house in the Atlanta suburbs was silent, almost unnervingly so. All she could hear was the ticking of the clock on the living room wall, counting down what felt like the last vestiges of her patience. Nala tried to reach for the glass of water on the nightstand, but her hands were shaking uncontrollably. The glass slipped from her grasp, crashing onto the thick area rug, spilling the remaining water. All Nala could do was close her eyes, succumbing to the despair that washed over her. Zaire had changed drastically over the past year. Ever since he was promoted to department head at his company, he'd become arrogant and dismissive. He often came home late, quick to find fault with Nala for any and everything. I'll tell the cleaning lady to throw out everything of Nala's that's left. I don't want a single trace of her remaining. An hour later, Zaire's luxury sports car smoothly pulled into the driveway of the big house. Zaire stepped out of the car wearing sunglasses, acting like a king. Anna walked arrogantly on his arm. Zaire opened the front door. "Welcome to our palace, my queen," he said. They walked inside. It was strange. The house was extremely silent, but also very clean. Too clean. Zaire had expected Nala to have left a trail of chaos, throwing things or crying, but she hadn't. Zaire walked to the bedroom, opening the door. His heartbeat quickened slightly. He found the room incredibly tidy. The bed where Nala had been writhing in pain yesterday was now made up with crisp white sheets and pillowcases. There was no trace of medicine or the broken water glass. Even the rug next to the bed where Nala had dropped the glass looked dry and perfectly clean. "She must have cleaned up," Zaire muttered, bewildered. "I'm glad she behaved," Anna retorted from behind. "At least she was useful one last time." Zaire felt a little uneasy. It was strange. How could Nala, with a high fever, have ordered this room so immaculately? And where were the dirty sheets? He checked the closet. Nala's modest clothes, her long dresses, and her headscarves were gone. The vanity drawers were also empty. "She really is gone," Zaire said, finally feeling relieved. He shook off the unease. Maybe she had called a taxi and taken a small suitcase. Better this way. A clean cut. "Of course, it's clean. Now let's measure this room," Anna exclaimed excitedly. "I want to change this bed. It's too old-fashioned. I want a round canopy bed, and these walls need painting. I want a gold color." Anna rushed through the house. Her sharp voice broke the silence. She pointed a finger at the furniture. "This sofa is ugly. Change it. That painting is tacky. Throw it away. This kitchen needs a complete remodel." The countdown in his head kept ticking down, relentlessly marching toward his destruction. Tomorrow was the 3rd day, the day of reckoning. The morning of the 3rd day was the most terrifying of Zaire's life. The sun rose, but it felt like the end of the world, a harbinger of his personal apocalypse.
9 a.m.
As he and Anya ate breakfast in awkward silence, the tension so thick it could be cut with a knife, the doorbell rang, shattering the fragile pretense of normalcy. Zaire and Anya looked at each other, their faces pale and drawn. Zaire shook his head frantically. "Don't open it. Pretend we're not home." The bell rang again, this time more insistently, accompanied by loud, authoritative knocks on the door that reverberated through the house. Mr. Zaire, we know you're inside. We are the execution team from the law firm Vega Associates. Zaire's heart stopped in his chest. Anya started crying in fear, her carefully applied makeup streaking down her face. What are we going to do, Zaire? What are we going to do? Anya sobbed, her voice filled with panic. Zaire, utterly terrified, ran toward the back door, hoping to find some way to escape. He thought about fleeing through the yard, disappearing into the anonymity of the city. But when he cautiously opened the kitchen door, 2 burly security guards were already standing there, blocking his path. Please remain inside, sir, they said firmly, their expressions unyielding. Zaire was trapped, surrounded. He reluctantly went back to the living room, his shoulders slumped in defeat. When the team of lawyers managed to force the door open with the help of a locksmith they had brought along, a man in an impeccable suit walked in, holding a thick folder. Behind him, several uniformed court marshals carried rolls of holding seizure stickers, ready to plaster them over everything in sight. Mr. Zaire, your time is up, the lawyer said in a cold, professional voice, his eyes devoid of any emotion. Zaire trembled. Director Inosi immediately approached Nyala, offering a slight bow. Chairperson, he is waiting. Nyala nodded, her gaze never leaving Zaire. She walked slowly, each step seeming to trample on the remnants of Zaire's pride. She stopped exactly 3 feet from the man who was now shaking uncontrollably. Nyala examined Zaire from head to toe, from his messy hair to his dirty pajamas and the cheap hotel slippers he was wearing. Her gaze was cold, analytical, and utterly merciless. Nala, Zaire barely managed to whisper, his voice hoarse with emotion. Yes, Zaire, it's me, Nyala said, her voice calm and clear, echoing in the silent lobby. The sickly, broke little woman you abandoned 3 days ago. Zaire couldn't take it anymore. All his strength deserted him. His knees buckled, and he slumped uncontrollably onto the cold marble floor. He knelt at Nyala's feet and wept uncontrollably.
Nala, I'm sorry.
Please, Nala, I was wrong. I was blind. I sinned against you. Zaire tried to grab the edge of Nyala's jacket, but his hands were shaking too violently to grasp anything. Everyone in the lobby was stunned into silence. The scene was too shocking to comprehend. A man hysterically crying at the feet of their chairperson. Nyala's 2 bodyguards stepped forward to remove Zaire, but Nyala raised a hand, silently signaling them to stop. She wanted Zaire to experience the full weight of his humiliation. Forgive me, Nyala. Give me back our house. Please, I'll divorce Anya. I'll be your husband again. Nyala looked at him without expression, without pity, without anger, just a freezing void. She leaned down slightly, not to help Zaire up, but to whisper in his ear. Get up, she ordered, her voice low but laced with undeniable authority. Zaire, summoning the last vestiges of his strength, rose to his feet, trembling uncontrollably. His face was drenched in tears and sweat. Nyala looked directly into his eyes. You want to beg? The man who once wore impeccable shirts and drove a sports car was now sweating under the scorching sun, loading sacks of rice weighing dozens of pounds onto the back of a truck. His body, once toned and athletic, was now emaciated and strained. His skin was burnt by the relentless sun, black and grimy. His muscles bulged, not from the controlled exercises of a gym, but from the brutal demands of forced labor. His back ached permanently, a constant reminder of his physical degradation, and his hands were calloused and often wounded. He had long forgotten the smell of clean shirts or expensive perfumes, replaced by the stench of sweat, rotting market trash, and cheap tobacco.
What happened to Anna?
Zaire no longer cared, his heart hardened by bitterness and self-pity. The last news he heard from his fellow porters was that Anna, after losing the Nyala, after spectacularly losing the lawsuit, had plunged into crippling debt. To make ends meet, she found herself working as a waitress at a dive bar. Rumor had it she'd been caught in a police raid a few weeks back. Her fate was far grimmer than mere poverty. She was utterly ruined. Zaire felt nothing, no pity whatsoever. His heart was long dead. He moved like a machine. Lift a sack, get paid, buy rice, sleep. That was the monotonous cycle of his existence. That afternoon, after 12 grueling hours of work, Zaire received his wages, a meager $55 in crumpled bills. He trudged out of the market, his legs aching with exhaustion. He stopped at his usual food stall, ordering a plate of rice with a side dish to go. Clutching the bag of food, he shuffled towards a busy intersection. He slumped down on the grimy sidewalk, leaning against a traffic light pole, ready to consume his only meal of the day. Across the street, a massive video screen on the side of a towering building suddenly flickered to life. It was broadcasting a live business news program. Zaire's hand froze, his plastic spoon hovering in midair. The breaking point came 3 months ago when Nala started coughing frequently and feeling constantly fatigued. Zaire never showed an ounce of compassion. On the contrary, he'd started calling her the sickly woman. It seemed he'd completely forgotten that Nala was the wife who had stood by him when they had nothing, back when they were living in a cramped, rented apartment in Brooklyn. Nick. The sound of a luxury sedan pulling into the driveway broke the silence. Nala felt a glimmer of relief. Finally, Zaire was back. Surely, he'd brought her the medication she desperately needed. Nala struggled to sit up, bracing her aching back against the headboard. She waited for Zaire to open the door and bring her the drugs. The front door slammed shut, followed by heavy, hurried footsteps. They weren't the steps of someone concerned. They were the steps of someone filled with anger. The bedroom door flew open, revealing Zaire's towering, imposing figure. He was still wearing his impeccable designer shirt, his hair neatly styled, his face handsome, but the gaze he fixed on Nala was filled with cold, hard hatred. In his hands, there was no pharmacy bag. Instead, he carried a thick, brown legal folder. Nyala, Nala's voice was hoarse and weak. Where are my meds? My head hurts so bad, honey. I have a fever. Zaire laughed, a jarring, discordant sound. Meds? I brought something much better than medicine. This is medicine for both of us. A cure for my life. Zaire strode over to the bed and flung the brown folder onto the comforter, covering Nala's legs. Nala trembled, looking at the folder in confusion. What is this, honey? Open it if you don't want to die of curiosity, Zaire replied, his tone cold and cutting. Summoning the last of her strength, Nala picked up the folder. Her trembling fingers struggled to break the seal on the envelope. She pulled out several sheets of paper. On the top line, she read the words, Petition for dissolution of marriage. I want an imported Italian kitchen set. Zaire just smiled. Yes, honey. I'll change everything. Everything for you. We'll celebrate tonight. I'll invite our closest friends. I'll order the most luxurious catering in the city. Zaire picked up his phone and called his usual premium catering service. He ordered the most expensive menu items, imported Wagyu beef, fresh seafood platters, and European premium juice drinks. Understood, Mr. Zaire. The total order amount is $2,000. Following procedure, we request a 50% deposit payment now, the catering employee said over the phone. Of course, send me the invoice. I'll pay with my primary credit card, Zaire said arrogantly. He sat on the sofa Anna said she hated and opened his bank app. Okay, I understand. Here's the English, U.S., translation and rewrite of the provided text, following the interpret and clarify style with slight expansion. Zaire furiously tapped the phone app. He was trying to put down the $1,000 catering deposit. He carefully punched in his credit card number, double-checked it, and hit the payment button. The phone seemed to think for a moment, those little loading circles spinning, then a stark red notification exploded onto the screen. Transaction denied. Zaire's brow furrowed. That was strange. He knew the limit on this card was still way up there, hundreds of thousands of dollars available. It's probably just some signal interference, he muttered to himself, trying to stay calm. He tried the payment again. Again, transaction denied. Honey, what's taking you so long in there? Anya called from the living room, where she was busy snapping selfies, presumably for social media. "One moment, darling," Zaire replied, trying to sound unconcerned. "I think the bank is just having a little network hiccup." He was starting to feel a prickle of embarrassment. He switched to another credit card, also from the same bank, figuring that would surely work. Rejected. Exactly after 3 days, as stipulated in the demand letter. By order of the court, we will now initiate the forced execution procedure of this house and all the assets contained within to settle the unpaid debt of our client, AH Holdings. "No, please. Give me more time," Zaire cried, falling to his knees in desperation. His arrogance and bravado had vanished in an instant, replaced by abject fear and humiliation.
"I'll pay."
"I promise. Just give me one more week. One more day." The lawyer shook his head, unmoved by Zaire's pleas. "You were given more than enough time. Our team will begin their work now. You are only permitted to take your personal items that you are currently wearing. You have 15 minutes to voluntarily leave this property." 15 minutes. Anya shrieked, her voice cracking with despair. At that moment, the full weight of the reality crashed down on her, shattering her illusions of wealth and security. She looked at Zaire, who was kneeling on the floor, crying like a child, a broken shell of the man she thought she knew. The man she thought was a king was now nothing more than a beggar, stripped bare of his possessions and pride. Anya's face hardened with a sudden, decisive resolve. She didn't want to sink with him, to share in his ruin. Without saying a word, Anya ran to her room, her high heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. A bewildered Zaire shouted after her, "Anya, where are you going?
"Help me."
Please don't leave me." The court-martials began entering the house, their faces impassive. They didn't care about the personal drama unfolding before them. They started methodically placing AH Holdings foreclosure stickers on the flat-screen TV, the luxury sofa, the expensive paintings, marking everything as seized property. Outside, the rumble of a tow truck could be heard, arriving to take Zaire's prized sports car, the symbol of his success. She asked, her voice now loud enough for everyone around to hear. "Too bad, Zaire. My company, Ebo Holdings, doesn't hire beggars." After saying that, Nyala took a silk handkerchief from her purse. Zaire had a fleeting moment of hope that she might wipe away his tears, but instead, Nyala used the handkerchief to wipe an imaginary speck of dust from the sleeve of her jacket, as if she had just touched something dirty. "My company," Nyala stated clearly, making sure everyone heard, "does not hire beggars." With that pronouncement, Nyala turned elegantly and walked back to the VVIP elevator. "Director Inosi, handle him," she said without looking back. "Give him one last lesson." "Understood, Chairperson." The elevator doors closed, and Nyala vanished from his sight. Zaire stood rooted to the spot, completely shattered. The public humiliation he had just suffered at the hands of the woman he had considered trash was 1,000 times more painful than losing his house and car. Director Inosi approached him. "Come on, Mr. Zaire, let's finish this. There is something Chairperson Nyala wants you to see." "What else? What else are you going to take from me?" Zaire yelled in despair, his voice raw with anguish. "Not take," Director Inosi corrected him, her voice cold and precise, "but to make you realize just how stupid you have been all this time." Zaire was dragged away by the 2 security guards, this time to a luxurious meeting room on the mezzanine floor. Zaire was shoved into a chair inside the cold, impersonal room. The large glass window of the room overlooked the lobby, allowing him to see the activity below and be seen by those in the lobby. In front of him, Director Inosi sat calmly, accompanied by 2 men in impeccable suits, whom Zaire was sure were lawyers. Zaire could only lower his head and stare at the marble floor, a symbol of everything he had lost. He had nothing left. "Mr." There, on the giant screen, was Nyala's face. It was a live feed from that morning's global launch event. Nyala's composed, clean, and dignified face dominated the screen, magnified dozens of feet high. A foreign journalist posed a question in English, with subtitles running below. "Chairperson Nyala, You are currently one of the wealthiest and most influential women in the world. What's the secret to your success? Zaire held his breath, transfixed. He watched as Niala smiled slightly. There is no secret, Niala replied, her voice resonating across the intersection. I simply never stopped working. I never stopped believing in my capabilities, even when the person closest to me underestimated me and called me worthless. The food bag slipped from Zaire's grasp. The rice and side dish spilled onto the dirty sidewalk, a pathetic mess. But Zaire didn't even notice. His eyes were glued to the screen. Up there, elevated for all to see, the woman he had once dismissed as sickly and useless was being celebrated as a global business icon. And down here, on the hard street asphalt, the man who had once considered himself a king was sitting like a beggar, staring at the remnants of his dinner mingling with the dust. Zaire lowered his head, his gaze fixed on the ground. He didn't cry, but rather let out a dry, hollow laugh filled with utter despair. He had lost. He had not only lost his fortune and his position, but he had lost everything that mattered. The woman he had abandoned now owned the world, while he had nothing, not even the pride to salvage the fallen rice. Karma had completed its mission with brutal efficiency. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. Nala's world seemed to stop. She gasped for air. The feverish heat vanished, replaced by a bone-chilling cold. She looked at Zaire, searching his eyes for the slightest hint of doubt. But all she found was satisfaction. Divorce. Nala whispered in disbelief. Why are you surprised? Zaire scoffed. He sat on the edge of the bed, but kept his distance, as if Nala disgusted him. Listen up, you sickly, broke little woman. Do you think I want to spend the rest of my life taking care of a useless burden like you? I've handled everything. I already filed the divorce papers. Zaire got up again and began pacing the room, as if delivering a speech. I'm sick of it. Sick of seeing you cough every day. Sick of seeing you lying in bed with no energy. You're a liability. A weight on my life. Honey, what did I do wrong? Nala tried to speak, but tears began to well up in her eyes. Your fault is being poor. You can't give me anything. Zaire gestured around the luxurious room. Look at all this. This house, all this expensive furniture, the luxury SUV in the garage. It will all be mine. I'm the one who worked hard for all of this. Everything is in my name. Nala said nothing. Behind her gaze, there was something Zaire couldn't decipher. Zaire took Nala's silence as a sign of defeat. Are you listening to me? You won't get a single penny. Asset division? Don't even dream of it. You brought nothing into this house, and you'll take nothing when you leave. Then Zaire spoke the words that shattered what little was left of Nala's heart. When this is over, he said, his face glowing, I'm marrying my fiancée, Anna. He paused for effect. She's much healthier, much prettier, and, most importantly, she understands my position as a successful man, unlike you. Nala closed her eyes. So, there was another woman. The name was unfamiliar, but the pain was all too real. I don't want to see your face in this house again tomorrow morning, Zaire added cruelly. A cold sweat started to bead on his temples. This couldn't be happening. He was a VIP client, practically royalty to these people. Why were all his cards being refused? He even tried his debit card. Rejected. Insufficient funds. Zaire's eyes widened in disbelief. Insufficient funds?
Impossible.
His salary had been deposited just 3 days ago. He quickly closed the payment app, his mind racing, and opened his main mobile banking app instead. His heart hammered against his ribs. He entered his password, his fingers shaking slightly. The screen loaded, then froze, and a message popped up. Access blocked. Please contact your nearest branch. Zaire's body went rigid. Every muscle tensed. Panic began to creep through his chest, cold and constricting. This was a disaster unfolding in slow motion. He couldn't access his payroll account, his lifeline. He couldn't use any of his credit cards. Zaire, the catering guy called me, Anya yelled. He says the payment still hasn't gone through. How embarrassing. Her voice dripped with annoyance, her face now creased with a frown. Relax, honey. Relax, Zaire managed, though he was anything but relaxed. He was full-blown panicking. He remembered he still had an emergency account at another bank, an account he barely used and which wasn't linked to any of his credit facilities. The balance wasn't much, but he thought there were probably a few $1,000s left in it. With trembling hands, he tried to pay the catering deposit using that account. Success. Zaire sighed in relief, a wave of tension washing over him. For a moment, he had managed to save face in front of Anya.
See?
It was just a network problem, Zaire said, forcing a smile. It's all sorted now. The catering will arrive at 7 o'clock tonight. Anya immediately perked up again. Great. Now I need to get ready to go to the hair salon. As soon as Anya had flounced out, Zaire's smile vanished instantly. His face was pale and drawn. Something was terribly, fundamentally wrong. 5 minutes later, Anya came down, dragging 2 large suitcases that she had prepared at some point, a clear indication that she had been planning this escape for some time. She completely ignored Zaire, who was staring at her dumbfounded, his face a mask of shock and betrayal. She headed straight for the front door, her eyes fixed on her own escape. Anya, are you leaving me?
Now?
Zaire cried, his voice broken and pleading. Anya stopped and turned, her face contorted with hatred and contempt. Leaving you? Of course, I'm leaving you. I don't want to live with a poor failure like you. I thought you were a king, but you were just a clown, a pathetic joke. Enjoy your ruin alone, Zaire. I've already called a cab.
Goodbye.
Anya walked out the door, dragging her suitcases past the execution agents without a backward glance, her only concern her own survival. Zaire froze, paralyzed by shock and disbelief, betrayed and abandoned, exactly as he had done to Nala just 3 days ago. The cruel irony of the situation was not lost on him. The difference was that Nala had been kicked out while she was sick and vulnerable, while Anya was abandoning him at the very peak of his ruin, when he was at his lowest. Time's up, Mr. Zaire, a security guard said, grabbing Zaire's arm and pulling him roughly to his feet. Zaire was unceremoniously dragged out of his own house, the house that had been the symbol of his success and status. He was thrown onto the hot sidewalk in front of the house, landing hard on the unforgiving concrete. He was still in his pajamas, disheveled and humiliated. He watched, helpless, as his prized sports car was towed out of the garage and driven away, disappearing down the street. He watched as the door of his house was chained and sealed, the AH holding stickers proclaiming his financial demise to the world. Everything was gone, stripped away in a matter of minutes. Zaire. Director Inosi began, her voice calm, like a teacher about to lecture a particularly foolish student. You are still confused about how the wife you considered useless, poor, and sickly, Miss Nyala, could be the owner of all this. Zaire said nothing. He had no strength left to respond. Director Inosi pressed a button on the table. A large projector screen dropped from the ceiling, and the room lights dimmed slightly. The screen lit up, displaying a large title, Ebo Holdings Business and Financial Report. Well, let's begin the lesson, Mr. Zaire. Let's go back 5 years, Director Inosi said. Graphs, income statements, balance sheets, and figures in billions that made Zaire's head spin began to appear on the screen. 5 years ago, you had just been laid off from your first job. You were depressed, angry, and blamed the entire world for your misfortune. While you were busy looking for a new job and lamenting your fate, your wife, whom you believed was just a homemaker, started working in the kitchen. Zaire slightly lifted his head, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Not cooking for you, Director Inosi continued, as if she could read his thoughts. She was formulating skincare products with herbal recipes passed down through her family's heritage. When you mocked her for being glued to her phone late at night, she was actually responding to hundreds of orders from her first customers. When you finally got a new job and started becoming arrogant and boastful, she was secretly renting an office space for a small production facility. The screen changed, displaying a series of photos. A photo of a cramped office, a photo of a larger warehouse, and a photo of a very spacious, modern factory, followed by photos of Ebo Holdings branches in New York, Paris, Shanghai, and Tokyo. Ebo Holdings. Mr. Zaire, it stands for Azubo Holdings. Azubo is your wife's maiden name. This company, this building, everything you see, is 100% hers. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. I'm giving you until dawn. Get out of this house tomorrow morning. Don't take anything but the clothes on your sick body. Zaire looked at Nala, who is now weeping silently. Hot tears streamed down her pale cheeks. Crying won't change a thing. The papers are already filed. The process will be quick. Zaire then turned around and straightened his shirt. I'm sleeping at Anya's downtown loft tonight. I don't want to be under the same roof as you. He paused at the door. Tomorrow morning, I'm sending someone to make sure you're gone. Nala wanted to scream. She wanted to curse him, but all her strength was gone. She could only watch her husband's back disappear behind the door. The bedroom door slammed shut, followed by the slam of the main door. A moment later, the roar of Zaire's SUV leaving the driveway. Nala was alone, gravely ill, divorced, and evicted. She cried her heart out. The pain in her heart was far worse than the fever burning her body. She wept for her shattered marriage and for the cruel betrayal. After crying for 15 minutes, Nala stopped. She gasped for air, roughly wiping away her tears. In the midst of the agony, something else arose, something cold, hard, and calculating. Her face, which had been pale, now hardened into resolve. She groped beneath the pillow. It wasn't the one she usually used. It was an extra pillow she always kept there. Her fingers touched a hard, slim object. She pulled it out. It was a state-of-the-art smartphone, far more sophisticated than the old phone she kept on the nightstand. That phone was her only secret, an object Zaire didn't even know existed. The phone didn't have a pattern lock. It opened with her fingerprint. The screen lit up, showing a plain white background. There were no social media apps, only encrypted business applications. Nala opened a single contact saved under the name Director Imani and Kosi. She pressed the call button. Why was his main account blocked? Did it have something to do with Niella?
Impossible.
That stupid woman couldn't possibly pull something like this off. Could she? He promised himself that first thing tomorrow morning, he would call the bank and give them a piece of his mind. He would demand compensation for this outrageous humiliation, no doubt. As he paced around the room, trying to suppress his growing anxiety, the doorbell rang. Zaire went to open the door. A uniformed courier stood in front of him, holding a large brown folder. Mr. Zaire? Yes, that's me. Certified mail. Sign here, please. Zaire signed the receipt, closed the door, and examined the folder. The sender was a very expensive-sounding law firm, Vago Associates. Zaire assumed they must be the court approval documents related to his divorce petition. He opened it impatiently, eager to put that chapter behind him, but the contents were not from family court. It was a notary demand letter, a formal legal warning. His eyes quickly scanned the harsh, legalistic sentences. Dear Sir, it began, on behalf of our client, AH Holdings, we hereby notify you that you have incurred a breach of contract on your business line of credit. The total outstanding amount of your principal for $1 million has immediately fallen due. We grant you a grace period of 3 days to liquidate the full debt. Failure to do so will result in the immediate forced execution of your assets, namely 1 unit of residence at 12 Oak Street and 1 unit of luxury sports car. The glass Zaire had been holding slipped from his numb fingers and shattered on the luxurious marble floor, the sound echoing in the suddenly silent room. Sweat poured down his face. 3 days? For $1 million? Foreclosure on the house? No, impossible, he whispered, shaking his head in disbelief. I paid the installment just last week. What breach? And what is AH Holdings? In 3 days, Zaire had gone from a wealthy, successful businessman to a broken, penniless outcast. He collapsed helplessly on the concrete, his body racked with sobs. Passers-by looked at him strangely, some with pity, others with a mixture of amusement and contempt. The man who had been so arrogant and self-assured was now a public spectacle, a cautionary tale. He was alone, broke, homeless, with nobody to turn to. In his extreme panic, in his unspeakable humiliation, his brain could only focus on one name, one person. The source of all this devastation, Nala. He desperately checked his pockets, his fingers trembling. His old phone was still there, miraculously intact. He no longer knew who to call, who could possibly help him. He wanted to curse Nala, to unleash his rage and blame. He needed to beg Nala, to plead for mercy. He didn't know what he wanted to do, he just needed to vent, to lash out at someone. With shaking hands, he searched for Nala, my wife, in his contacts. He pressed the call button, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't really expect her to answer. Maybe the number had changed, or the phone was turned off. But it rang once, twice, and on the third ring, it connected. Hello, the voice on the other end said. It was Nala's voice, but it wasn't the weak, sickly voice he remembered. It was the calm, clear, and cold voice of a confident and powerful woman. Zaire, who had been about to launch into a tirade of anger and blame, suddenly felt very small, utterly insignificant. He broke down, his carefully constructed facade of masculinity collapsing. He cried, great heaving sobs bursting out of him uncontrollably. It was the wail of a defeated loser, a man stripped bare of everything he valued. Nala, he cried hysterically, his voice choked with emotion. Nala, help me, please. Nala, I don't know what happened. They seized our house. They took the car. They kicked me out. I'm on the street. Nala, why did this happen? Zaire trembled violently, his world tilting on its axis. But how? The funds, the money. The money. Director Inosi smiled cynically. You always underestimated her, because she never asked for much, right? You were proud to give her a monthly allowance of $300 for expenses, which you often cut when you were angry. You called her poor. Director Inosi pressed a button again. The screen changed, displaying a large number, clear and undeniable. $1,500,000. $5 million. Director Inosi emphasized each word. This is Miss Nyala's personal monthly net income, which went into an account in her own name, of which you had no idea. An income far greater than the salary of your company's CEO, the woman you insulted and evicted for being poor. Zaire felt nauseous. The world seemed to spin around him. $5 million a month, plus bonuses. And your debt. Director Inosi continued, her voice unrelenting. The $4 million loan you used to buy that house and that luxury car. You were so arrogant when the bank approved it, weren't you? A year ago, when you almost went bankrupt from mismanaging your side businesses, your loan went into default. The bank was about to foreclose on your assets, but Miss Nyala knew. Through me, Ebo Holdings bought your entire debt from the bank. We settled it. Zaire's eyes widened in stunned disbelief. So that house and car were already the property of Ebo Holdings a year ago, Mr. Zaire. Miss Nyala saved your reputation, allowed you to continue living there, allowed you to continue bragging about your supposed success. She was still trying to respect you as her husband. She hoped you would change. Zaire's tears returned, but these were not tears of remorse, but tears for his infinite stupidity. He had thrown out his savior. She knew I was cheating, Zaire whispered, terrified. Of course, she knew, Director Inosi said, her voice laced with scorn. She knew everything. One of the lawyers spoke now, his voice calm and measured. And now, mister. Her heart was pounding, not from illness, but from the anger beginning to surge within her. The call connected on the first ring. A woman's calm, professional voice answered on the other end. Good evening, Miss Nala. You're calling at this hour. Are you all right? I was told you weren't feeling well. Nala took a deep breath, trying to steady her trembling voice. Director Nkosi, she said, her voice raspy but sounding extremely cold. Contingency plan, activate it. There was a brief silence on the other end. Then Director Nkosi's voice turned serious.
Understood, Mom.
What has happened? I was evicted, Nala said. Zaire divorced me. He thinks I'm a useless, sick lil-popper. Good heavens, the sheer audacity of Mr. Zaire. Director and Kosi hissed. Director, I'm ill. My fever is very high. I need medical evacuation. I don't want to go to a regular hospital. Come to the house and pick me up. Bring the private medical team from the King's Mountain Clinic.
No sirens.
Do it quietly. I don't want anyone to know.
Understood, Mom.
The VVIP medical team will be there in 30 minutes. I will come to fetch you myself.
Can you hold on?
Nala looked at the divorce papers on the comforter. With the strength she had left, she crumpled the paper in her fist. I have to hold on, Director. The game has just begun. She hung up the phone. Her body still trembled from the fever, but her eyes now glowed with sharpness in the darkness of the room. Zaire had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had just thrown out his wife, not knowing he had just thrown out the owner of Ebo Holdings, a global corporation with a net profit of $1. $5 million a month. Nala waited in suffocating silence. Every tick of the wall clock sounded like a hammer blow. She tightly gripped her secret phone. Her mind was a mess. She feared Zaire might suddenly return. She feared the medical team might be delayed. Her body alternated again between chills and searing heat. His carefully constructed victory celebration had suddenly morphed into the beginning of a horrifying nightmare. That night, amid the forced laughter and music with his friends and Anya, Zaire could only manage a strained, fake smile. His mind was a whirlwind of chaos and dread. He felt an invisible trap slowly tightening around his neck, suffocating him. Zaire couldn't sleep at all that night. Beside him, Anya slept soundly, exhausted after their little party and beauty treatments. But in Zaire's mind, the words of the notary demand letter spun endlessly like a broken record. For $1 million, 3 days, forced execution, AH Holdings. As soon as the first call to prayer echoed at dawn, Zaire sprang out of bed. His body ached with tension, and his eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. He didn't bother to shower or groom himself. He just splashed some water on his face and threw on some clothes haphazardly. He no longer cared about his appearance. At 8 a.m., as soon as the bank opened its doors, Zaire was already speeding in his car toward the branch of his main bank, where he was treated as a VIP client. He had to clear up this mess, get to the bottom of it. It had to be a clerical error, some kind of mistake on the bank's part. It just had to be. At precisely 8 a.m., just as the bank had opened, Zaire stormed inside. He bypassed the polite line of regular customers waiting to be served and headed straight for the VIP service counter.
I'm Gira.
I want to see the branch manager right now, he said loudly, slamming his VIP card onto the counter for emphasis. The surprise service employee immediately snapped to attention. Zaire was ushered to a special waiting room. 5 minutes later, a sharply dressed relationship manager met with him. It wasn't the branch manager himself, but someone of importance. Good morning, Mr. Zaire. How may I help you today? Let me just pull up your account details. What did I do to deserve this? On the 40th floor of the AH Holdings building, inside a VVIP treatment suite that had been transformed into a temporary luxury office, Nala sat calmly, her posture erect and dignified. She was no longer bedridden, frail, or sickly. She was healthy, vibrant, and exuded an aura of quiet power. An emerald satin scarf framed her face, which now looked resolute and determined. In front of her, Director Nkosi and several department heads were gathered around a conference table, deep in a strategy meeting. The old phone Nala had asked Director Nkosi to bring from her former house vibrated on the table, buzzing softly against the polished surface. The name, Zaire, flashed on the screen, a stark reminder of her past. The meeting paused, the hushed conversation dying down instantly. All eyes turned to Nala, waiting for her cue. Nala raised a hand silently, asking everyone to hold their peace, to maintain their composure. She looked at Director Nkosi and smiled faintly, a subtle acknowledgement of the gravity of the moment. She pressed the speaker button on the phone so everyone in the room could hear the conversation. Zaire's hysterical crying immediately filled the room, his anguished sobs echoing in the sterile atmosphere. Nala, help me please. Nala, I don't know what happened. They seized our house. They took the car. They kicked me out. I'm on the street. Nala, why did this happen? What did I do to deserve this? Nala waited patiently for Zaire to finish weeping, allowing his emotional outburst to play out. She gestured for the others to remain silent, to witness this moment of reckoning. The silence in the room contrasted sharply with Zaire's panicked voice on the phone, creating an almost unbearable tension. After Zaire's sobs finally subsided, leaving only ragged breaths and whimpers, Nala leaned closer to the microphone, her voice calm and controlled. Zaire, let's look at the evidence. The screen changed again. This time it wasn't financial graphs, but video recordings. Zaire saw his own living room. He saw himself tenderly embracing Anna on the sofa. The date in the lower right corner of the video showed it was 6 months ago, when Nyala had to attend a meeting for her company. The video changed to their bedroom. Zaire saw Anna trying on Nyala's clothes and scarves, laughing and throwing them on the floor, and Zaire was there, laughing with her. And then, the last video, the most lethal of all. 3 days ago, in the same bedroom, Zaire saw himself standing arrogantly in front of the bed. He saw Nyala lying weakly, her face pale and drawn. He heard his own voice, filled with hatred, echoing in the meeting room. Listen up, you sickly, broke little woman. I already filed the divorce papers. Get out of this house tomorrow morning. Enough, Zaire cried, covering his face with both hands. Stop it.
Please stop it.
The screen went black. The room fell silent again. Hidden cameras, the lawyer said calmly, his voice devoid of emotion. Installed a year ago by Miss Nyala, when she began to suspect you had another woman. Zaire was shattered. The evidence was irrefutable. He couldn't deny it, couldn't escape the truth.
Nah.
She's going to put me in jail? Zaire asked desperately, his voice trembling with fear. Initially, that was the plan, Director Inosi said. We had prepared charges for verbal domestic abuse, abandonment, and adultery. Enough for you to rot in jail for a few years. Zaire trembled with fear, the reality of his situation crashing down upon him. But, Director Inosi continued, her voice cold and cutting. Miss Nyala changed her mind. Jail is too comfortable for you. She wants you to feel something worse than jail, a life of unending humiliation. Director Inosi placed a thin folder in front of Zaire. This is Miss Nyala's official divorce petition. It also includes a claim for moral damages. Exactly 25 minutes later, her phone vibrated silently. It was a text message from Director Nkosi. *, we have arrived. The door is unlocked. The team is entering. Nala let out a sigh of relief. She had anticipated that Zaire wouldn't lock the door. The man was too arrogant to think his nearly dying wife could do anything. With the strength she had left, Nala pushed aside the comforter. Her feet touched the cold, carpeted floor. Her head spun violently. She almost fell, but grabbed the bedpost. She had to leave. With trembling hands, she grabbed a long trench coat hanging behind the door and put it on. She wouldn't abandon this house in an undignified state. She wouldn't let Zaire take her dignity. The bedroom door opened silently. Nala flinched for a moment, but saw two people in dark scrubs. They weren't wearing the flashy, white nurse uniforms. They moved quickly and quietly. Behind them appeared Director Nkosi, a woman in her late 50s with a stern yet kind face, dressed in a sharp blazer and neat attire. Her face showed deep concern upon seeing Nala's condition. Ms. Nala, Director Nkosi whispered. I'm ready, Director. Nala replied weakly. Put Ms. Nala on the portable stretcher. Director Nkosi ordered the medical team. The team immediately unfolded a collapsible gurney. They helped Nala lie down with utmost care. Ma'am, we'll inject a temporary fever reducer so you're more comfortable during the transfer, one of the medical team members said. Nala just nodded. She felt a slight prick in her arm, and soon a cold sensation spread. As they lifted her, Nala took one last look at the bedroom ceiling, the room she herself had decorated, the room that had been a silent witness to Zaire's shift in attitude. They carried her out of the room and through the opulent living area. Nala's gaze settled on the large wedding photo hanging on the wall, a picture of her and Zaire smiling happily. "Don't beat around the bush," Zaire interrupted curtly, his patience already frayed. "Explain to me why all my credit cards are blocked, why my payroll account is frozen, and why I received this absurd breach of contract demand." The manager calmly looked at his computer screen, his expression unreadable. "I apologize for the inconvenience, Mr. Zaire. Allow me to investigate." Interesting." "What's interesting?" Zaire yelled, his voice rising. The manager looked up, maintaining a professional demeanor. "We are not the ones who blocked your accounts and credit cards, sir. It appears that your balance is effectively zero and your credit card limit is completely exhausted."
Impossible.
Zaire screamed, his face reddening. "My salary is thousands of dollars and my limit is hundreds of thousands. I didn't use anything yesterday." "Correct, sir. However, our system records an emergency automatic debit on your business line of credit last night at 12:01 a.m. This debit has absorbed the entire balance of your payroll account and simultaneously exhausted the entire remaining limit of all your credit cards." Zaire went deathly pale. "An emergency debit? By whose order?" The manager looked at the screen again, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Not by our order, sir. It's an order from the new owner of your line of credit." "New owner?" Zaire repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "According to our records, the $4 million business loan you had with our bank was sold 6 months ago to a private equity firm called AH Holdings. We only act as a managing agency for the monthly installment payments." Zaire's heart sank like a stone.
AH Holdings.
That name again. Why would they do this? "I've never missed a payment." The manager shook his head, his face impassive. "That is outside our jurisdiction, sir. According to the notification we received last night from AH Holdings, you have been declared in breach of contract under the loan sale agreement." She replied with a deliberate, strong voice, a voice Zaire had never heard before, a voice that commanded respect. "Excuse me," she said, her tone perfectly neutral. "Who is this?" There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Zaire's sobbing stopped abruptly, as if he had been punched in the gut.
What? What did you say?"
"It's me, Nala. Zaire, your husband." Mr. Zaire," Nala said with an indifferent tone, as if she were speaking to a complete stranger. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. First, you are no longer my husband. My divorce papers were filed this morning, finalized just hours ago. Second, about our house. 3 days ago, you made it very clear that it was your house, didn't you? Not ours. Your castle." Zaire gasped for breath, his throat dry and constricted. This voice was Nala's voice, but it wasn't his Nala, not the weak, submissive woman he could trample on. This voice was filled with power, with an unshakable authority that made him tremble. "Nala, where are you?" he whispered, his voice terrified. "What did you do? Your voice, are you healthy? What's going on?" "I'm in the middle of an important meeting right now," Nala replied smoothly, ignoring his questions. She leaned back at her chair, looking out at the sprawling city landscape through the massive glass window behind her. "We're discussing business expansion into the Middle East. Something you wouldn't understand. Business, you know. That thing you used to pride yourself on." Zaire was utterly confused, his mind struggling to grasp the reality of the situation. "Nala, don't talk nonsense. Help me. I know this is your doing. It must be that friend from your church group, Director Imani, right? You complained to her. Please, Nala, tell her to stop all this. I'll do anything. I'll come back to you. I'll give you everything. I'll divorce Anya. I promise. Just make this nightmare stop." A cold, cynical laugh came over the speaker, a sound that sent shivers down Zaire's spine. Zaire opened it with trembling hands. "Miss Nyala is not asking for asset division. She doesn't want to take your dirty money. She has only recovered the house and car that are already hers, but you still have to pay for your actions." Zaire's eyes widened in terror at the figure in the claim. he screamed, his voice cracking with disbelief. I don't have that kind of money. You took it all. Of course not. Director Inosi smiled coldly. But you still have your job, right? I almost forgot. Director Inosi's smile widened, a chilling expression of triumph. Breaking news, Mr. Zaire. An hour ago, Ebo Holdings just completed the acquisition of 70% of the shares of the company you work for. And as the new majority shareholder, Chairperson Nyala's first order of business is a management reorganization. Your termination letter has already been signed. You are officially fired. This was the final nail in Zaire's coffin. He had lost everything: house, car, wife, savings, and now his job, the very source of his pride. You are demons, Zaire cried, his voice broken with despair. We are only doing justice, Director Inosi said, her voice devoid of pity. And about that $400,000 debt, Miss Nyala is very kind. She knows you can never pay it, so she is giving you an option. Director Inosi slid another sheet of paper in front of Zaire. Sign this statement. Admit all your actions, your adultery, your verbal domestic abuse, and your abandonment. If you admit you were wrong, the debt will be waived. Zaire looked at the confession, his heart sinking. It was the last shred of his pride, the last thing he had left. Why do you need this? Just an assurance, the lawyer said calmly. So, you don't go around inventing false stories. Zaire had no other choice. Fired, bankrupt, and homeless. With trembling hands, he took the pen offered to him and signed the document, confessing his sins. It's over, Director Inosi said quickly, gathering the papers. The Zaire of the past, whom she knew, the Zaire who was tender and loving. Now that photo felt like a mockery. Leave everything. Don't take anything, Nala whispered. Of course, ma'am. We don't need anything from here, Director Nkosi replied firmly. They exited the front door. In the driveway, there was no flashy ambulance. Instead, a black Mercedes-Benz Sprinter was parked, looking like a presidential escort vehicle. The side door slid open, revealing an interior that was a fully equipped VVIP emergency medical space. Meanwhile, in a luxury downtown loft, Zaire was laughing heartily. He poured a cocktail into a tall glass for Anna, a young, beautiful woman wearing a sheer robe. So, tomorrow we'll officially be the owners of that big house, darling? Anna asked flirtatiously. Of course, I evicted her. That sickly woman won't dare to object. She has nothing. Tomorrow, I'll have all the locks changed, and the day after we can start remodeling the bedroom, Zaire said, embracing Anna. How exciting! Finally, all of this will be ours.
Anna exclaimed.
Zaire raised his glass. To our new life, he toasted. His old cell phone lay on the table on silent mode. He didn't want to be disturbed by any call from that sickly woman. Inside the smooth-gliding medical vehicle in the night, Nala's condition was being attended to. A doctor waiting inside immediately started in 4. Temperature of 107 degrees Fahrenheit, 41.7 degrees Celsius. A pretty severe infection, but we're acting now. We need to move her quickly to the hospital for intensive care, the doctor said. Director Nkosi sat in a chair next to Nala's gurney. She observed Nala's pale face with a worried expression. Ma'am, you must be strong. We've prepared everything at the King's Mountain Clinic. Nala closed her eyes. The fever reducer was starting to take effect, reducing the dizziness. Her thoughts drifted back to the past. When a breach occurs, AH Holdings has the right to forcibly withdraw funds from your accounts as an initial late penalty, and it appears that is exactly what they have done. Zaire felt faint, the room spinning around him. He clutched the edge of the desk for support.
How?
How can I be in breach? I've done nothing wrong. We don't know the specifics, sir. Surely they are explained in the notary demand letter you received. You will have to speak directly with AH Holdings or their lawyers, the manager said with an expressionless tone, as if he were discussing the weather. Zaire stumbled out of the bank, feeling like he'd been punched in the gut. The sky seemed to spin, and sweat soaked through his shirt. He collapsed into the driver's seat of his sports car, the very car that would be repossessed in 3 days. His hands were shaking uncontrollably. AH Holdings, that name echoed in his head, a terrifying mantra. He pulled out his phone and frantically searched for AH Holdings on the internet. What appeared was a profile of a giant corporation. Asbo Holdings, a conglomerate operating in the luxury fashion, global skincare, and real estate sectors. Their sleek, modern logo was everywhere. Zaire realized he had seen it before on billboards and in magazines, but he had never paid any attention to it.
Why?
Why would such a massive company even bother buying my miserable debt? He muttered in desperation. Then he remembered the name of the law firm in the demand letter, Vega Associates. Mustering the last vestige of courage he had left, he called the phone number listed on the document. Good morning, Vega Associates. Yes, good morning.
I am Jide.
I received a notary demand letter on behalf of AH Holdings. There must be a mistake. I've never defaulted on my loan. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and chillingly indifferent. There is no mistake, Mr. Zaire. Our client is acting entirely within their legal rights. It was Nala's laugh, but it was twisted, devoid of warmth or compassion. Come back to you? Do you really think I would pick up the trash I threw out? And Anya, you're too late, Zaire. She left you an hour ago, right when the execution team arrived to take everything you own. My legal team just informed me. She couldn't stand the sight of your failure. Zaire felt as if a bucket of ice-cold water had been dumped over his head, stealing his breath and leaving him numb. Nala knew. She knew everything. She was watching everything unfold, manipulating him like a puppet on a string. Who are you? Zaire whispered, his voice filled with pure, unadulterated terror. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. Who the hell are you, Nala? Nala smiled, a slow, knowing smile that never reached her eyes. Do you really want to know, Zaire? After all the years you lived with me, you insulted me, belittled me, calling me a sickly, broke woman who only played with her phone. You never once asked me what I was really doing on my phone, did you? You assumed I was just wasting my time. What do you mean? Zaire asked, his voice trembling with dread. Nala signaled to Director Nkosi, giving a subtle nod of her head. Director Nkosi took over the phone, her voice calm and professional, but carrying an undeniable weight of authority. Hello, Mr. Zaire. You are now speaking with a member of the board of directors of Asbo Holdings. Zaire recognized the calm, measured voice from the demand call, the voice that had delivered the death sentence to his financial empire. Director Nkosi? Why do you have Nala's phone? What is your relationship with Nala? Nala took the phone back, her voice steely. She's not just my friend, Zaire. She's my right hand, the CEO who runs the company for me, the brilliant mind behind all the success you now see. Silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Just then, the meeting room door opened, and Nyala walked in again. She stood in front of Zaire, who was now utterly defeated, his head bowed in shame. You divorced me, Zaire? Nyala asked in a low, dangerous voice. You threw those divorce papers in my face when I was sick and vulnerable. Nyala pulled out the same folder Zaire had thrown onto her bed. Director Inosi had kept it as a memento of his folly. In front of Zaire's eyes, Nyala slowly tore up the divorce petition Zaire had filed. The torn pieces of paper drifted onto Zaire's lap, a symbolic gesture of his utter ruin. I am the one divorcing you, Nyala said coldly, her voice sharp and unforgiving, and I'll make sure you don't take a single dime. She looked at Zaire one last time, her eyes filled with contempt. Now get out of my building. The two security guards who had accompanied Director Inosi immediately entered the room. Remove this trash, Director Inosi ordered, her voice dripping with disdain. Zaire did not resist. He was already numb, beyond feeling. He was dragged out of the room, his arms held firmly by the guards. He was pulled through the crowded lobby, the employees looking at him with a mixture of pity and disgust. The automatic glass doors opened, and Zaire was thrown back onto the scorching sidewalk. He fell, penniless, jobless, and homeless, wearing nothing but dirty pajamas. Ironically, he carried a confession of his sins that freed him from a crippling debt. His ruin was now truly complete. For the second time that day, Zaire found himself sprawled on the hot asphalt. The glass doors of the Ebo building closed behind him, separating him from the luxurious world that he had just discovered belonged to Nyala. He coughed, the street dust catching in his throat. His face was drenched with tears, sweat, and grime. For a moment he didn't move, his body paralyzed by shock. His brain could no longer process the swiftness and completeness of his downfall. 5 years ago, at the beginning of this whole secret, Zaire had just been laid off from his first job and was depressed for months. Nala, then just a simple homemaker, tried to comfort him. Zaire started becoming sensitive about money. He forbade Nala from working, citing pride. "Your job is to be at home. I'll earn the money," he insisted, even while unemployed. But Nala, who secretly held a degree in pharmacology, felt frustrated. She had many ideas. In her spare time between household chores, she started experimenting in the kitchen, not cooking but formulating skincare products using organic, herbal ingredients. She recalled ancient recipes inherited from her grandmother. She used all her personal savings to buy high-quality raw materials. After months of testing, she successfully created a facial serum and a whitening cream with astonishing effects. She tried it on herself, and the results were incredible. Zaire, busy looking for work, paid her no mind. He only knew his wife was busy playing in the kitchen. Nala mustered her courage and opened a small online store. Initially, she only sold to acquaintances, but her products became famous through word of mouth. Orders skyrocketed. It was then that Zaire landed a new job. His salary was quite good, and he started becoming arrogant. He often saw Nala busy until late at night on her old phone, responding to customer orders. "I give you money, and you're still glued to that phone. It seems like you have nothing to do," Zaire yelled one night. Nala simply stayed silent. She had just closed a sale worth $30,000 that very night. The turning point was when she met director Imani Nkosi at a seminar for women entrepreneurs. Nala attended as a participant, and director Nkosi was the invited speaker. Director Nkosi was a former high-ranking executive from a multinational corporation who had opted for early retirement. Nala plucked up the courage to meet Director Nkosi after the event. "You violated Clause 11, Section B of the loan agreement you signed." "Clause 11, Section B? What's that?" "If you find reading the documents you signed tedious, Mr. Zaire, that clause stipulates that you are obligated to maintain family harmony and not commit immoral or dishonorable acts that might affect the image of the business loan." Zaire fell silent, the blood draining from his face. "That's an absurd clause. It has nothing to do with the debt." "It does, Mr. Zaire. When your loan was sold to our client, all clauses, especially that moral clause, were activated. Our client is a company that highly values family values. Your action of divorcing and evicting your gravely ill wife, Nala, to live with another woman is a severe violation of Clause 11, Section B." Zaire couldn't breathe.
How? How did they even know about that?
"We have irrefutable proof, Mr. Zaire. Photos, audio recordings, and witnesses. We know you evicted your wife 2 nights ago. That is what triggered this breach claim." Zaire's knees weakened. Nala. All of this was because of Nala.
But how?
How did Nala even know AH Holdings? What did they want from him?
"Give me time.
I'll pay the installments. I promise." Zaire pleaded now, his voice trembling with fear. "It's too late for installments.
Our client is not interested in that."
According to the notary demand letter, you have 2 days and 8 hours left to pay the $4 million. Otherwise, our execution team will seize your house and your car." The call ended abruptly. Zaire threw his phone against the dashboard in a rage, the plastic cracking under the force of the impact. He screamed in the confines of the car, a primal sound of pure despair. $4 million in 2 days. It was utterly impossible. His salary was frozen, his accounts emptied. His only assets were this house and this car, which turned out not to be his at all. He tried to think clearly, to find a rational explanation amidst the chaos. Nala. This had to be Nala's doing. But how? Zaire struggled to process the avalanche of information that was crashing down on him. threatening to drown him in disbelief. He was a man gasping for air, clinging to the last vestiges of his shattered reality. "You asked who I am," Nala continued, her voice resonating with power and confidence. She walked toward the window, looking down at the street far below, at the spot where Zaire was probably sitting like a beggar, the epitome of failure. "You called the number of your poor, abandoned wife, whom you so easily dismissed. But allow me to officially introduce myself." Nala's voice now resonated with the full force of her authority, filling the room with her presence. "Hello, Zaire. You are speaking with Nala, the sole owner, founder, and chairperson of Asbo Holdings, the company with a net profit of $1.5 million a month that just legally and rightfully recovered all its assets from you. Every single penny." The phone slipped from Zaire's numb hand, falling onto the sidewalk with a dull thud. The connection was broken. A thud echoed. Zaire himself froze, his eyes widening in sheer terror as he stared at the scorching asphalt. His breath hitched in his throat, ceasing to flow. It wasn't just that his world had crumbled, it had completely and utterly vanished. Petrified, Zaire collapsed onto the grimy sidewalk. His phone lay beside him, its screen spiderwebbed with cracks, yet the call remained connected. He could hear Nyala's calm, even breathing on the other end, a chilling contrast to the frantic pounding of his own heart.
"Non, impossible,"
Zaire whispered, his voice cracking with disbelief, refusing to accept the reality. "This has to be a nightmare. Nala, you're lying, right? This is all a lie, isn't it?" Nyala's voice returned, cold and impassive, devoid of any warmth. "I don't have time for lies, Zaire. I'm busy, but since today marks the day of your downfall, I'll grant you a sliver of my time." A moment of silence hung in the air. Fired, bankrupt, abandoned by his mistress, and publicly humiliated by the wife he considered trash. The confession of his sins he had signed felt like a death sentence. Passers-by looked at him strangely, a man in dirty pajamas crying in front of the lobby of a luxury building. A security guard from the building was now standing at the door, watching him with a sharp gaze, making sure he didn't try to re-enter. Zaire knew he had to leave. He couldn't sit there forever, wallowing in his misery. Summoning the last of his strength, he stood up, his knees shaking uncontrollably. He started walking aimlessly, not knowing where to go. He had no house, no money, no possessions. He checked his empty pockets, nothing. His broken phone had been left in the lobby when he was dragged out. Now he truly had nothing but the clothes he was wearing. His stomach roared, a painful reminder that he was starving. The last time he had eaten was the tense breakfast with Anya hours ago. The sun was beginning to set in the west, casting long shadows across the street. The air was hot and suffocating. He remembered his friends, his party friends, the ones he used to spend his money on. Maybe he could ask them for a loan. He walked several miles to the coffee shop where they usually gathered, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. With a look of humiliation, he entered the coffee shop. Several of his friends were there, laughing and joking, seemingly without a care in the world. "Zaire, my God, what happened to you?" one of them asked, shocked by his disheveled appearance. Zaire told his story, a distorted version that painted him as the victim of a vast conspiracy. "I was framed, man. My accounts are frozen. Loan me some cash so I can get back on my feet." The surprised expression on his friend's face turned cold and wary.
"I'm sorry, Jire."
The news just spread through the group chat. "You got fired from the company, right? And Ebo Holdings seized all your assets." She showed her products and a handwritten business proposal. Director Nkosi was astonished by Nala's potential. "This product is excellent, Miss Nala, and your business strategy is very solid," Director Nkosi had said. In short, Director Nkosi agreed to join, not as an investor, but as a partner. Director Nkosi wanted to work again and saw Nala's vision. They founded Ebo Holdings. Nala was the owner and the brain behind all the products. Director Nkosi was the CEO, the face of the company. Nala requested one thing, that her name not appear anywhere. She wanted to remain Zaire's ordinary wife. Ironically, With the help of director Nkosi's network, she hoped that Zaire, by succeeding in his new job, would become a better husband. But Nala was wrong. The more successful Zaire became, the more arrogant he grew. Ebo Holdings, on the other hand, grew explosively. From skincare, they expanded into luxury fashion. High-end clothing and accessories designed by Nala became highly popular in domestic and international markets, New York, Paris, Shanghai, and even Tokyo. A net profit of $1.5 million a month was a conservative figure. That was Nala's personal net income, aside from the company's revenue, which was dozens of times larger. Nala kept all this wealth carefully concealed. She continued to live simply, even when Zaire wanted to buy the luxury house and the sports car. He had to take out a large loan from the bank. Zaire boasted that he got the loan thanks to his excellent job performance. What Zaire didn't know was that his business loan, which was on the verge of defaulting a year ago, had been secretly bought entirely by an investment company. And that company was a subsidiary of Ebo Holdings, meaning they belonged to Nala. The luxury house and the sports car he was so proud of, which were the collateral for that loan, now legally belonged not to the bank, but to Ebo Holdings, meaning they belonged to Nala. Nala opened her eyes. Did Nala work at Holdings as a cleaning lady and complain to her boss?
Impossible.
It was illogical. He racked his brain, trying to remember anything Nala had ever said about influential contacts. He tried to find out who owned Holdings. He opened a business news portal and started scrolling through articles. The owner of Holdings was described as a mysterious figure, shrouded in secrecy. The company was run by a CEO named Director Imani Nkosi. Imani? Zaire frowned. That name sounded vaguely familiar. Suddenly, he remembered. Years ago, Nala had mentioned an Aunt Imani, a friend from her church group, who was an incredibly kind and generous woman. Zaire had always scoffed at her. It's just a bunch of neighborhood ladies, he had said dismissively. Could it be? Could Nala's church friend really be the CEO of Holdings? Zaire's head throbbed. This was all becoming too complicated, too surreal. He had to find Nala. He had to beg Nala. He had to ask Nala to withdraw her complaint to Director Imani. Yes, that was the only way. He immediately started the car, his tires squealing as he sped out of the parking lot. He needed to find out where Nala was now. He had to go to Nala's parents' poor, ramshackle house. He had to go right now. As he pulled out of the bank parking lot, his phone rang. It was Anya. Zaire ignored the call, letting it go to voicemail. Anya called again, and again, growing increasingly insistent. Irritated and distracted, Zaire finally answered. What? Where are you, honey? Why are you screaming? Come quickly. The credit card you gave me this morning was also rejected at the hair salon. I'm so embarrassed. Do you even really have money? Zaire slammed his fist on the steering wheel in frustration. More problems piling up on top of everything else. I have an emergency. You pay first with your own money.
What?
My money?
Impossible.
Transfer money to me right now. I told you, I have an emergency, Zaire shouted, his voice cracking. Zaire remained stunned, his gaze fixed on the asphalt beneath his feet. Lift your head, Zaire, Nyala commanded, her tone sharp. Look across the street, slightly to your left. Slowly, like a broken automaton, Zaire raised his head. His swollen eyes squinted against the harsh midday light. Across the bustling avenue, a blue-glass skyscraper stood in arrogant splendor. At its peak, 3 giant letters gleamed in the sun.
Ah!
Ebo Holdings Building, Zaire whispered, his throat parched and raspy. Yes, Ebo Holdings, Nyala confirmed. I'm on the 40th floor. I can see you clearly from my window. You look so pathetic sitting like that on the sidewalk. She paused, a cruel amusement lacing her tone. The security guards in this area will be along to kick you out soon. Zaire swallowed hard, icy terror coursing down his spine. Nyala was watching him, observing his humiliation. Come to the lobby, Zaire, Nyala continued, her voice laced with a chilling purpose. I want to see you. I want to witness with my own eyes the face of that arrogant man crumble into dust. The call abruptly disconnected. Zaire remained stunned for a full minute, his body paralyzed by shock. He had nothing left. The house was gone. The car was gone. Anya was gone. And now, even his pride was about to be utterly annihilated. He had no other choice, nowhere else to turn. A morbid curiosity, mixed with a foolish hope of somehow being able to plead his case, compelled him to stand. With hesitant steps, he rose, his pajamas already stained with the grime of the street. He walked like a zombie toward the massive glass doors of the Ebo building, oblivious to the cacophony of car horns blaring around him. The building's lobby was another world entirely. The floor was polished, imported marble, reflecting the bright lights in a dazzling display. An artificial waterfall cascaded down one of the walls, adding to the sense of opulence. Zaire froze, his blood turning to ice in his veins. How do you know?
Everyone knows, man.
You messed with Ebo Holdings. You're crazy. I'm sorry, Zaire. I can't help you. I don't want any trouble with Ebo. With that, the friend quickly walked away, avoiding any further contact. The other friends pretended not to see him, turning their backs and whispering amongst themselves. Zaire was left standing alone in the middle of the coffee shop, an outcast, a pariah. The waiter, sensing the awkwardness, subtly ushered him out. He returned to the street, utterly humiliated and defeated. He was now a leper, an outcast. No one dared to touch him for fear of Nyala's shadow. Night fell, blanketing the city in darkness. Zaire was starving, his stomach gnawing at him with relentless hunger. He curled up to sleep in front of a closed store, using his arms as a pillow against the cold, hard concrete. The buzzing of mosquitoes and the stench of the sewers filled the air, keeping him in a state of restless misery. This was his instant karma, the swift and brutal retribution for his arrogance and betrayal. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Anna was in a state of panic. She had managed to escape Zaire's house with 2 suitcases full of designer clothes and bags, the spoils of her affair. She temporarily rented a cheap room in a seedy motel, the stark reality of her situation beginning to dawn on her. She frantically contacted other rich men on her contact list, desperately seeking a replacement for Zaire, a new sugar daddy to provide her with the lifestyle she craved. "Hello, President Ona, it's Anna. Are you busy? Let's have dinner together," she said in a flirtatious voice on the phone, trying to sound confident and alluring.
Anya. Who's Anya?
The man replied, his voice distant and uninterested. "Oh, President, it's Anna. We met at the party last month."
Ah, Anna?
"Zaire, the bankrupt's girlfriend." "Yes, I remember." The man's voice instantly changed, hardening with disdain. The medical vehicle was already entering the VVIP area of the hospital. "Director," Nala called, her voice still weak, but her gaze as sharp as steel. "Yes, Miss Nala?" Director and Kosi leaned closer. Zaire took the house and the car. He said they were all his, that they were in his name. Director and Kosi smiled slightly, a meaningful smile. He forgot, ma'am, who paid off his business loan from the First National Bank of Atlanta a year ago when he was about to face foreclosure. He forgot that the collateral for that loan was that house and that luxury car he boasted about every day. And he certainly doesn't know, Director and Kosi added, that the investment company that bought all his debt from the bank is Ebo Holdings. There was a moment of silence, and the doctor and nurse inside the vehicle professionally pretended not to have heard the secret conversation. "Director and Kosi," Nala said, "initiate the asset recovery procedure." "When should I start, ma'am?" Nala looked at the streetlights passing by the window. "He evicted me tonight. He will think I'll be homeless tomorrow morning. I want to let him enjoy his victory with that woman. Give him 3 days to enjoy his win." Director and Kosi nodded. 3 days. Consider it the final, free rental he's giving us. After 3 days, our legal team will move. Exactly. On the 3rd day, we'll recover everything that is rightfully yours, ma'am. Good. Nala closed her eyes again. Now, focus on curing me. I need to be healthy to see his face shatter. The medical vehicle stopped in a private entrance. A team of specialist doctors was already waiting. Nala was transferred to a presidential treatment suite. Far away from there, Zaire was sleeping soundly in Anna's arms, dreaming of his beautiful new life, completely unaware that his real life would end in 3 days. The victory was too sweet for Zaire. He woke up in Anna's luxurious loft. He hung up abruptly, cutting off Anya's protests. At the hair salon, Anya stared at her phone in stunned silence. It was the first time Zaire had ever yelled at her. A chilling premonition began to creep into her mind. The rich man she had been so proud to show off suddenly had problems with all his cards. Suspicion began to gnaw at her. Something was terribly wrong. Zaire no longer cared about Anya's woes. He stomped on the accelerator of his sports car, desperate to get away from the building pressure. He had to find Nala, no matter what it took. He would have to kneel at Nala's feet if necessary, swallow his pride, and beg for forgiveness. He didn't know that the Nala he was so desperately searching for was currently recovering from her illness in luxurious comfort, sitting in her executive chair on the top floor of the AH Holdings building, monitoring Zaire's every panicked move through real-time reports from her legal team. Zaire couldn't escape. The net was closing, and he was hopelessly ensnared. The second day was a living hell. His frantic trip to Nala's parents' house ended in complete failure. Nala's parents' house was small and modest, exactly as he had expected, bordering on poverty. But Nala's parents, though seemingly poor and unassuming, looked at him with a mixture of hatred and pity that cut him to the core. Nala was not there. They claimed they didn't know where their daughter was, or refused to tell him. "You threw out my daughter when she was sick and vulnerable, didn't you?" Nala's father asked, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "And now you come crawling back, looking for her? Get out of here. Don't you dare set foot in this house again." Zaire returned to the city empty-handed, defeated and desperate. The little money he had left in his emergency account was spent on gas for the round trip. That night, he and Anya had a monumental fight, the kind that leaves scars. Dozens of immaculately dressed employees hurried back and forth, absorbed in their own important affairs. The cold blast of the air conditioning hit his sweaty body, sending a shiver down his spine. Zaire stood in the middle of all this grandeur, utterly lost and unsure of what to do. He felt like a stain on a pristine white canvas. A beautiful receptionist looked at him with a mixture of disgust and suspicion. "Excuse me, sir. May I help you?" the receptionist asked, her voice distinctly hostile. Zaire stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. "I'm here to see Nyala." "Miss Nyala?" The receptionist raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Miss Nyala, you mean our chairperson? Do you have an appointment?" "No, but she asked me to come here." "Tell her it's Zaire." "I'm sorry, sir. You cannot enter without an appointment." The receptionist already had her hand on the phone, clearly about to summon security. "Let him pass." A firm voice cut through the air, interrupting the receptionist. Zaire turned to see Director Imani Enosi standing there, flanked by 2 burly security guards. Director Enosi's face was calm, but her eyes were filled with disdain as she looked at Zaire.
"So, you're Zaire."
"Permit me to correct you, Director Imani," Director Enosi said coldly, her gaze unwavering. "I am not his group friend. I am his CEO. Now follow me. Chairperson Ayala is waiting for you." Zaire was led through the lobby without resistance, now the center of everyone's attention. A disheveled man in dirty pajamas, walking flanked by the CEO and security guards. Murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. Zaire wanted to cover his face, but he had no pride left to shield. They didn't take him to the main elevators. Director Enosi stopped him at the VVIP waiting area in the center of the lobby. "Wait here. Chairperson Nyala will come down." Zaire stood rigid, his heart pounding so hard it ached in his chest. He felt like a defendant awaiting his death sentence. "I'm sorry, I'm busy right now. Don't call again." The call disconnected, leaving Anna in stunned silence. She tried calling another man on her list, hoping for a different response. The result was the same. The news of Zaire's ruin had spread like wildfire through the city's social circles, and her name had been dragged down with it. She was now branded as the woman who was with him when he fell, the evicted mistress, a social pariah. Her reputation in high society and among rich men was shattered, leaving her an untouchable. No one wanted to come near her, fearing the taint of Zaire's downfall. Unfortunately for Anna, her bad luck didn't end there. As she was lamenting her fate in the dingy motel room, there was a knock on the door. Two men in impeccable suits stood in the hallway, their faces grim and unyielding. "Miss Anna, we are from the law firm Vega and Associates. We have a court summons for you." Anna's heart stopped, a cold wave of fear washing over her. She received the summons with trembling hands, her fingers fumbling with the crisp legal document. Nyala had sued her. The charges were adultery, defamation, and destruction of private property. The final blow, the amount of damages Nyala was seeking. $1 million. $1 million? She cried hysterically, her voice cracking with panic. She didn't have that kind of money. All her bags and clothes had been gifts from Zaire, the ill-gotten fruits of his failing career. The following days were a living nightmare for the two villains. Anna quickly ran out of money, unable to afford the exorbitant rent of the cheap motel room or even basic necessities. She couldn't afford a lawyer to defend herself against Nyala's lawsuit, leaving her vulnerable and exposed. She started selling her designer bags one by one at bargain prices, desperate to survive and keep a roof over her head, however humble. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, bathing the room in golden light. Anna was still sleeping beside him, tightly hugging his arm. Zaire looked at her pretty face and smiled contentedly. He had done it. He had gotten rid of the burden on his life, that sickly woman Nala. He imagined that, by now, Nala would be crying at a bus station, trying to get back to her parents' poorhouse. Zaire chuckled quietly. She was no longer his problem. His bright new life would begin today. "Good morning, honey." Anna's husky, flirty voice rang out. She opened her eyes. "What time is it? Is that woman gone from our house yet?" "She's definitely gone," he replied confidently. "I told her to leave before dawn. She has no choice. She has no money, no power. She's just a weak woman who lived off me." Anna smiled ear to ear. She got out of bed. Her silk robe slid, exposing her shoulders.
Great.
"I'm already excited to move there. This loft is luxurious, but that house is a palace, and I'll be the queen." "Of course, honey. Anything for you," Zaire said. "Come on, get ready. We'll have breakfast at our new house today." Anya demanded to know what was going on, accusing him of lying and hiding something. On the verge of the abyss, with nothing left to lose, Zaire finally confessed, revealing the truth about his financial ruin. He told her about the administrative problem and how his accounts were temporarily frozen, downplaying the severity of the situation. But Anya was not stupid. She had seen the notary demand letter lying on the table, the ominous words leaping out at her. 3 days for $1 million foreclosure. "You're ruined, Zaire." Anya screamed hysterically, her carefully constructed facade of glamour crumbling. "It's temporary. I'll fix it. This is all Nala's fault." Zaire yelled back in frustration, desperately trying to salvage the situation. "I don't care whose fault it is. I don't want to live with a poor person." Anya shrieked, her voice filled with disgust. That night, they slept in their cold, luxurious bed, back to back, a chasm of resentment and bitterness separating them. Zaire couldn't close his eyes, the weight of his impending doom crushing him. Every second stretched into an eternity. Suddenly, a soft chime emanated from the private elevator at the end of the lobby. Immediately, all activity in the lobby ceased. The employees who had been bustling moments before, the receptionist, even the security guards at the main door, all stopped what they were doing. They stood straight, looking toward the elevator, some offering a slight bow of respect. The doors of the VVIP elevator glided open. 2 personal bodyguards in black suits stepped out first, taking up positions firmly on either side of the doorway. And then, Nyala emerged. Zaire gasped for breath, feeling as though he might die on the spot. This woman was Nyala, but not the Nyala he knew. The woman walking toward him was every inch a queen. She wore a premium sapphire blue power suit that fit her body perfectly, accentuating her powerful figure. A silk scarf of the same color elegantly framed her sharp face in a modern, chic style. Her face, once pale and wan, was now radiant, adorned with fine, high-end makeup that accentuated her piercing eyes. She walked with unwavering confidence, her high heels clicking softly but firmly on the marble floor. An aura of power and wealth radiated from her every movement. The employees she passed greeted her with deferential respect. "Good afternoon, Chairperson." Zaire, after 3 days of relentless hunger and sleeping on the unforgiving streets, finally swallowed what little pride he had left. He had to eat. He had to survive. He walked to the central market where the porters gathered, hoping to find some kind of work. His face, once handsome and well-groomed, was now grimy with dirt and fatigue. He had grown a messy, unkempt beard, a stark indication of his fall from grace. "Sir, do you need any help?" he asked the porter's foreman, his voice barely above a whisper. The foreman looked him up and down, his eyes assessing Zaire's physical condition with a critical gaze. "You look clean, soft-handed. Can you lift sacks of rice? Those things weigh a ton." "I'm strong, sir. I need to eat, I need to work," Zaire pleaded, his voice cracking with desperation. "Move those sacks of rice from there to the truck. I'll pay you $1.50 per sack," the foreman said, his tone gruff and unsympathetic. And so began Zaire's new life, a life of hardship and toil.